What's up YouTube, MrLlamaSC here, and today we're going to be discussing Last Epoch and my overall thoughts from playing the game for about 15 hours, I believe, that I have invested into it. So, it is not hundreds of hours or thousands of hours or anything of that nature. There are going to be people who have invested more time, have seen more of the systems overall, and can give better thoughts or their thoughts, but for someone who jumped in and dabbled with stuff, played around with stuff, got to see many of the systems, I wanted to give some thoughts because a lot of people were simply asking for it. So, starting out, I'm just going to say I thought the game overall was very solid. I thought it was a solid game. It's lacking in some places. It's got some things that I don't particularly like personally, but I wouldn't like fault it or count against it. But I do think it was a solid modern ARPG. And I'm going to use the word modern a lot and just modern ARPG a lot when I describe it, because I think that is an important distinction for the game and for people that are wondering, will I like this game? Should I buy this game? Right. So let's kind of dive into some specifics. Number one, they have a full offline mode. This was and is very important. Number one, from that, because you get to go and enjoy the game just in single player, and you don't have to worry about your PC connection or their servers or any of that stuff to the internet. You can just play the game. And that's something that's severely lacking in so many games nowadays. They don't have a truly offline mode, and it's just really annoying. So I really enjoy that. That's something that to me is fun because, hey, when I get on an airplane or something, I want to be able to just like pull my game up and play with it for a couple hours and have fun. And that's that. So big shout out to that. The con with the servers and all this is they've had a lot of server issues. This comes from the game being too popular. There were way more people playing and that purchased it and got into it than they expected. And it kind of really just congested their servers. It's been a lot of issues for many days. And that's caused a lot of difficulty, I would say, for the reviews of it. They've got like mixed reviews on Steam right now because a lot of people, they want to just play online with their friends, right? And so without that, that's been a really big problem for them. So that's kind of a downside, something they'll figure out. I'm sure once that gets figured out, it will be very solid. Moving more into some of the stuff I noticed as I was playing through the game. Number one, there's too much loot. The amount of loot that drops, it feels kind of like that Path of Exile screen is just flooded with loot. You're getting like, I found like 6 idols at once, which are like charms essentially. There's just stuff all over the place. And again, it goes more to the modern ARPG, I feel like, where it's just like, oh my gosh, like, stop throwing so much loot at me. Now, with this being said, and this is the biggest, highest praise I can give for this game, my favorite thing, they created a build your own loot filter in the game that is amazing and makes me hate every other game that does not have a build your own loot filter like this one in it. I want every game to copy this and put it in the game. It is so easy, so simple. It's literally just like a tab, like your skill tree or whatever it is. You open it up, you just set the rules. They're very simple. Like, hide items with rarity of normal, or magic. Show items for the class mage that have these base types. Whatever it is, you can go through and get as specific or simple as you want. Takes a couple minutes, and then you're just constantly tweaking it. As you go around, you're like, ooh, actually, I want to find wands that are, of these specific types of wands will have this damage. So even though I don't want to find magic items of any other item, I do want to find wands that could be magic. And you just set that up and put that rule above it, and it will still show those. It's fantastic. You don't have to restart your game. You don't have to be opening up your folders and windows and going and finding your filters and adjusting and reloading. None of that. It's just on the fly, making it there. 11 out of 10 on the loot filter. Absolutely fantastic. It almost it almost makes me not care about how much loot they just flood the game with, because they at least put in this beautiful loot filter. But I still do have a small part that's like, just don't flood the game with so much loot as well. Like, I still don't love that. But this was a big, big win. The next piece, the map UI is a bit congested. That's something I wrote down. I don't even remember writing that down, but it is something that I put here on my notes, so it's something that I was kind of feeling, I guess, at the time. The next piece, the time travel with the story is interesting and can be fun. However, I don't feel like it really gets utilized and is... I don't know. The story seems okay. Not that I'm a big lore guy who sits there and is like going through all of it. But when I say the story, I kind of mean the gameplay of the story, if that makes any sense. It just kind of takes you through a lot of corridors. And again, does the piece that reminds me of many modern ARPGs, which is you just kind of go through, follow your corridor, and you don't have to be as invested. This mechanic is kind of, I know what I meant by map UI, is kind of the time traveling back and forth between the zones. And I feel like there were places that it could have been implemented really well. Like, it could be a cool puzzle mechanic where, I need to travel to this time, so this bridge is spawned, so I can move here and then travel back to that time, fight this monster, travel back here, right? Like, I feel like you could do cool puzzle mechanics with it, but it doesn't really feel like that. It just feels like, when it tells me to go to the next time or to go back and forth between it, or there's a thing, travel to it, I just kind of click it and go to it. Sometimes it just takes you to a zone where all you do is like push something and then you're supposed to go back again. And so it feels kind of like a waste. And then the amount of time it takes to travel between time zones or times is too much as well. There's like a big whole screen of you going through like the warp and then a load screen afterwards and whatever. So it kind of got annoying, I felt like. But I feel like, man, they really could have done some stuff here that would have been cool with this time travel. But instead, it didn't really change things. I didn't really feel like I was traveling through time. I didn't really feel like there was much going on with that. And what I meant by the note I said before, the map UI is a bit congested, it was the overall like travel map. So when I'm like trying to travel between waypoints and things, it was really confusing to know like exactly where I was, what the different towns and areas I wanted to go to were. It wasn't like very clean and easy for me to think about navigating. So that stuff I felt was kind of mid. It just was, it existed, but it didn't seem great. And again, that felt very modern ARPG to me, where it's like, yeah, just something to kind of get you through. There's technically a story and technically a thing, but you just kind of go through the corridors. And then there's arrows that just like point you every time you go to a map where you're kind of supposed to go. So again, it kind of takes away the exploration and all of that more. Going back to another positive is the negative mana system, which I thought was actually really cool. So in last Epoch, you actually can use a spell and it will take you can always use a spell if you have any amount of mana. Even 1 mana, I can use a spell that costs 50 mana. But it'll put me to negative 49 mana. And then I have to wait until my mana gets to 0 again, or 1 again, before I could use any spell again. So it creates a fun dynamic where when you're playing, if you can kind of like overstomp with your mana really fast to pump a bunch of stuff out, but then you have that time that is like you're weak and you can't really move around or do whatever like teleport, whatever it is, because your mana's out. You can use it for like last hits, things like that. it's a really cool mechanic. I was very impressed with just the creativity. This is the stuff that I like to see, that I wish I saw in Diablo 4, is taking chances, creating new systems. Sometimes they won't always feel great, but it's cool to like try it out, see it. And I thought this was one that actually did pretty well. Beyond this, talking about kind of like with mana, health, all that, there is regen in the game, and man, they need to just turn off health regen for the first like 15-20 levels. It is so good that the game is like impossibly easy in the beginning of the game. Later on, it felt like it kind of settled in. It wasn't as bad because you gain more life and whatever, but it wasn't like regenning so hard. But in the early game, you couldn't die. The regen was so strong, it was just like your life was always regenning up, not drinking potions, anything like that. So I felt like, man, tune that down some, make it a little bit of fun to play the first 15 levels, and like make me scared at some point. Let's see. Beyond that, I enjoyed how much they did make things like mana regen and stuff like that. Just affixes more important, so the itemization felt better. And this was something that I think is a really important piece within ARPGs, is having good itemization, where the various affixes matter and you care about them, but you have to kind of pick and choose and sacrifice with them as well. So you're like, okay, mana regen is important here, so I'm going to pick it up on these boots, but then that means I'll be sacking this resist, like you're doing that balancing act, and I feel like it's in a good position. I liked the crafting with that. We can talk more about crafting in a bit, but I liked the crafting within the itemization as well. What I liked about crafting was the simplicity. I thought it was decent crafting where there was the cool idea of like, all right, I can really try and have some big influence and create some really solid items with it, but there's also some chance to it. And then there's also just simplicity where you look at it and it is pretty easy. I put in my item, I can upgrade the tier of it, and and just like keep trying to upgrade the tier, and it can reduce the amount of what do they call it? Craftability, essentially, of the item until it can't be crafted anymore. And I can switch, some affixes around here and there if I want and try for stuff. Crafting potential. Thank you. So yeah, I thought, like, it's a pretty solid system. I definitely give it, one of the better crafting systems, like a 9 out of 10 for me on the crafting system. I think it's done pretty well, and I enjoyed it for sure. It's also cool because it gives importance again to these other items that you find. They really just only have importance for crafting, but at least it gives them some importance. So you're like, ooh, I found, these boots that have a T4 mana regen affix and a T4 fire resist affix, and I really want both of those. So I'm going to break these down and try and get some shards from it that I can use for crafting. So you're actually kind of interested in those sorts of items, and that stuff you can also deal with in your loot filter. I enjoyed some of the early monsters having a lot of damage. That was something that was at least nice. So again, I was talking about the game being like impossibly easy, but there were at least still some monsters I felt like, ooh, they did some decent damage. It was a little bit dangerous. What I didn't like, so that's the pro with that. What I didn't like overall is I felt like a lot of the monsters still didn't really matter and weren't very memorable. And this is the general modern ARPG problem that we see constantly, right? In so many of these modern ARPGs, the monsters just don't matter. It doesn't matter what the monster is. It doesn't matter what they look, whatever it is, they all feel the same. And a lot of this, I think, actually comes down to the AI. So I think you have pieces like, okay, many of the monsters are just kind of fodder. But, it's like, like Diablo 2, I think, is one of the best games in terms of monster variety. You have things like dolls that explode, death knights that gain fury. You have, and are big and tanky compared to a bunch of flares and that are shooting little tiny shots and are really weak, to the snakes that have charge, to the, zombies that move really slow but can hit really hard, to the souls with their lightning, right? Like, I mean, every zone, Ghost with Mana Burn, like they all really have this unique flavor and style and how they play. But additionally, their AI being different, I feel is really important. In games like Last Epoch and many other modern RPG games, all the monsters just kind of swarm at you. They all have like the same vision and they all just kind of make the same general swarming motion towards you. And there's not enough difference between them that that you really notice or it matters. You just kind of like walk through the zone and they all swarm at the same speed and you just cast your spells, whatever, and blow them up as you move through. And it starts to get mindless as you're going through. And I feel like that is one of the biggest issues that I see with this game and so many others, is there's not really that personality. There's not the monsters that run away from you or are trying to kind of kite you like you have there. When you approach them to hit you, you approach them to hit them, they move away from you and then cast their spells as they're like moving away. The ones that come flying at you, the ones that do have the swarm, plenty that do a really slow movement towards you, ones that keep their range and are shooting shots. I mean, there's just a lot of personality. And yeah, that's just lacking. And that really, I think, plays a big piece in my thoughts overall in these sorts of games, because I just feel like I get really mindlessly going and I'm not caring about what I'm fighting. And that really takes me out of the immersion. Other pieces. The overlay map, I think, is really nice. Just that you can tab and put it on top. You can change the opacity. I think it looks really solid. So I enjoyed that. A couple cons. There's only 5 skill hotkeys, really. Maybe there's 6 if you get like right click and left click. I think there's only 5 because you're like having move only as one of them. At least I am. And it just doesn't feel like it's enough, especially with how many skills you have kind of within the game. There were just many times where I just wanted to have more skills on my hotkeys, and I couldn't. And again, it felt like, is this so console gamers can play and just deal with their less skills? I don't know, but I really wasn't a fan of it. It was like, okay, I've got my teleport, I've got my move only, I've got this, and I didn't have room for so many skills. I want to try out Meteor, I want to try out but I can't. I just have a couple skills. And so they give you all these skills to use, but you really are just using the same few, and you don't get the ability to swap in and have different utility skills on there and all of that. So that was super annoying to me. It was also really hard to pick up items a lot of times. Maybe it's just me, but I struggled on clicking on items often. Hopefully that's something that they improve. That's a small con. A bigger con, early bosses were really slow, and even kind of bosses as they got later were not great boss fights at all. I didn't get to the boss fights at the very end game. Maybe those are solid, but I felt like the boss fights really, well, I was playing offline, so not server lag. I felt like the bosses were really reminiscent of like Diablo 2 boss fights, which are just like okay, but not amazing, right? I feel like Path of Exile to me has so many amazing boss fights in it, and I wish that those had been kind of taken over and were in this game more, because I was just, I don't know, I was underwhelmed by the bosses. I thought they did some positives. No level scaling in the game. I thought which is really nice. That's dumb, right, to just have level scaling in all the areas. The item glows on the items on the ground were not obtrusive. This was something that I actually thought was really nice, and something that I hate with like Diablo 3, whatever, right? It's like the big glow of the item and all over. It like kind of is like, ugh, get it like off my screen. I thought, man, I didn't even really notice it, but if you look, you can see. I thought it was really nice. A nice way to make the item stand out of like where a rare is and things, but not actually like in your face. There's a couple of small like changes that I would want. Like when you have new skills available, it doesn't always say, or it does, but if you go in and out of the screen, then it doesn't say anymore. I feel like that should remain if there's unspent points. I mean, these are like getting, really tiny and detailed. But the last thing that I'll really say, I wish was changed, and kind of reminds me again of the modern ARPG, is the camera is too close. It's I don't think it's quite as close as Diablo 4, but it's not far enough away still. It's still too close to the character, and it just kind of drives you a little bit insane, especially on the north and south. With the side to side, it's like, okay, because it's, 16 by 9, you can see better on the side to side. It's fine. But above and below you, especially with UI and stuff, you just don't get much room. You just can't see a lot. And it just was annoying. So I wish that they would give me more space. I don't know why all these games keep doing it. Is it for the artwork? They want to really make you see it. Is it for skins that you purchase? It's like if it's too far out, you won't enjoy them enough. People won't buy them as much. I don't know. But every game is too close nowadays. Again, modern ARPG. Just, they love their close cameras. I don't know. So, I got something in my throat now as I'm trying to close out. See if we can end this. Overall, again, I didn't get to crush through to the very end game. I know a lot of people said that the end game felt lacking. Didn't, they felt like they needed more there. And so the game was something that they'd play for, a couple hundred hours and then kind of be done for a bit. But the team, I think, is really great. I think they're very dedicated to the game. I think they're going to continue adding to it and making it better, especially because it's had such success here. They're going to get the servers improved, all of this. So I think, overall, the game to me is probably like a 7.5. I think it was solid. I think it was better than D4. I think it has a lot less content overall than Path of Exile, but had some places that it was better than PoE for me. They kind of simplified out of there a lot. So I think if you're someone who enjoys modern ARPGs, if you like Path of Exile but think it's too complicated, if you enjoy Diablo 3 but wish it was like a better game with better itemization and stuff, same kind of with Diablo 4, if you like it but wish the systems were mechanically better, I think Last Epoch is the game for you there. And I think you can very easily go and get, 100 plus hours of fun out of the game. I don't think it's a game currently that's built to be played like much more than that. I don't think it's a game that's built to be played thousands of hours. Some people might disagree, and they might, I'm sure somebody out there has played that amount. But I think, I don't know. To me, I wouldn't care to go through and play every single character through the game by any means. I thought the spells and things were fun, but it's not a story, again, not lore exactly, but a gameplay story that I felt was interesting enough to make me want to make 10 characters or 5 characters. But I can definitely see myself play 2-3 characters through, have some fun, mess around, and get, again, 100 something hours plus out of it. So that is my Last Epoch thoughts and kind of review of my play. I hope that you enjoyed it. Hopefully it gives you some insight. And yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe, YouTube. Peace, everybody.